Hello and welcome to Voice of the Nation. Tonight you are with me, Adisa Saprasert, and in today's show we're going to talk about the benefits of having a thief to come and rob our house. It's actually a metaphor to understand that why is it good to have a hacker to come and hack our companies or our corporate computer system. Today, as we know, we live in a world of digital information technology, and we might have heard that it is very important to have our information and our data secured. But with our honorable guest today, Dr. Warin Kerak, co-founder and Chief Corporate Strategy Officer of CloudSec Asia, will come and talk to us. Why is it good for hiring hackers to come and rob our house? สวัสดีค่ะ Dr. Warin.
Swadikap. Pleasure to be back here.
It's nice to meet you today. Hi, Doctor. Can you explain why is it important for big corporations to hire thieves, to hire them to come and rob our house?
Okay, I don't like the word thief robbing the house, right? I think that gives a very different perception. What we want to do is basically this, right? We want to hire a team of professionals to come in and test our system. Okay. So they come in and test our system, and by system I mean test the computer system, test the corporate network, test the corporate computer system. So what you do is that this professional team, we call this red team. Okay, red team.
Okay.
Yes, and what they do is they come in and do a thing called penetration testing or red team exercise, and they test the corporate information system. Now, what you get from these tests is you understand how vulnerable you are, what you need to do, where you need to fix, right? So it gives you an idea of where your weakness lies, right? Your metaphor is correct. It's like hiring in a way, it's like hiring a thief into the house, but here we are referring to the cybersecurity perspective, right? It's actually hiring a hacker to white hackers to try and test your system.
So what I understand is they are called the white hackers who come and check the system, the corporate system, but they have another name which is called the red team, right?
Yes. Most people call these team red team, right? Maybe it's just a fancy team, right? So the red team, the team that goes in and do penetration testing, the team that goes in and actually do the actual offensive work, But basically the metaphor is the red team should be something similar to a hacker that sort of tests your system, find out what you're vulnerable with, give you an idea, and then guide you on how to fix this issue. Right? So that's how they work. But by guiding, they would probably give you a report that indicate that this is vulnerable, this is where you need to fix, but it is on your own term to fix it. Mm-hmm. So that's how it works, right? And this is very, very common. Let's put it this way, because today regulation requires that data be secured. Like we're going to have the PDPA law upcoming very soon, right? PDPA law will come into enforcement June of this year. Now, what happens with the PDPA law is that it states that you need to protect people's data privacy, right? So you need to not only protect people's data privacy, you need to report if there's an incident, right? And to enforce this, they actually implement quite a hefty fine. So you could pay fine, up to 3 to 5 million, and you could go to jail, for example, if you don't do this. Now, how do you ensure that you're protecting people's data properly? What you do is that one of the aspects is you would do penetration testing. You would do these red team exercises on your corporate network to ensure that your corporate system is secured, that hackers or data thieves would not be able to come in and steal the data. I'm not saying that you do for PDPA, you only have to do this red team exercise, but it is one of the aspects that you need to do.
All right, understand. So after doing the red team exercise and they outline the risk of the corporate have, what does the organization have to do next after they know their risks?
Okay, so what the corporate needs to do is they need to fix the risk, right? Now to fix the risk, the corporate would have to have a security team or the network team or multiple teams that would work together. For example, when we discover risk, it may not be risk related to just technology. It may be risk related to people, that people has low awareness training. People don't understand. We are able to run low cybersecurity awareness training.
Okay.
That people don't understand cybersecurity. For example, I could trick you, send an email, trick you, and then you click on this email, you download a malware. So there's different aspect, right? So we will report based on the people, the process, the technology, yeah, and then the corporate would have to fix this, and it would involve multiple team. Now, when they fix this, the red team could guide, but when they fix it, the next step would be what they would do would be called a blue team, right? Fancy term again. We call this blue
Okay.
team. Yes, and the blue team is, it's a fancy term. It's a team that helps protect the network, right? Because protect the infrastructure for the corporate. So the blue team would do 24/7 services. It would look after the network, the infrastructure of the corporate network, and then it would, if it detects anything, it would advise the corporate and help the corporate fix it. So in a way, we have two teams, right? We have the red team that does the actual penetration testing, the actual offensive, the actual work like a hacker, and then we have the blue team that actually protects you 24/7, right? So, for example, our company CloudSec Asia, we provide blue team, and we have 24/7 monitoring, where we call this MDR, manage detection and response. So we would manage your network. We would then detect for any sign of attacking that's coming in, and then we would help you respond. Typically, for example, within 4 hours, we'll be able to fix the issue that you have, or sooner, depending on what we call the SLA, service level agreement. So that's an example. Now, one more very interesting team we have, and you might not know this, is a lot of people may not know, is called a purple team. Okay,
A purple
in
team.
cybersecurity, yes, we like fancy words. Let's put it this way. So in cybersecurity, we have this purple team. Now, what we call this purple team is, it's a team that works between the red and the blue, right? Because the red team is doing actually doing the hacking work, the penetration testing work. The blue team is doing the defense work. So the purple team coordinate between these two teams and get them to work together. For example, maybe if an organization has a red team, has a blue team, for example, has a blue team, the purple team would coordinate. So the red team would then attack the blue team, and then they would do the report. So yes, the purple team sits in between the red and the blue and help coordinate the work between the red and the blue team. Okay, it's a fancy term, but that's how we work in cybersecurity.
Okay, so basically, in order to secure our corporate data, we need three teams to work all along together: the red, the blue, and the purple team. And it is necessary for all teams to have all teams to work together.
Exactly, yes. I mean, first of all, I'd like to say that, corporate, they underestimate their cyber risk. Okay. The reason this happens is that because, again, cyber risks today are not reported, right? Once the law comes into enforcement, the PDPA law, you will see more reporting. You will see that, there's a lot more reporting on cyber risk. There's a lot more reporting on hacking, on data loss. So once this thing comes out, the news comes out, I mean, people would understand this a little bit more, right? So today there's under-reporting, right? Nobody wants to say, hey, my organization's been hacked. Nobody wants to do that. So that's one aspect of
Right.
it. And the other thing is that, what has happened if you look at the war in Ukraine. I mean, you see, one of the dimension of the war is a cyber war. Like for example, recently there is a lot of DDoS attack. Okay, DDoS, distributed denial of service attack. What this means is actually, you overwhelm the computers. The bank, for example, you overwhelm, you create so much traffic for the bank that the bank could not respond. For example, just to give an example, or any particular system, you would create traffic for it so it could not respond. It could be, and this is what we're seeing quite extensively in the Ukraine war. The Russians are attacking the Ukraine infrastructure, so they're disabling the infrastructure, whether banking, whether any utility sector. So they're trying to do that. And just very, very recently, I mean, there is another malware that just came out. It's called Viper malware. So the Ukraine
White.
discovered that this is, yes, the Ukraine just discovered this, right? They discovered this on so many machines, right? And this is very different. What it does is, when it's installed on the machine, it deletes the machine. It deletes the data on the machine. So
Oh
they
no.
try to install these Viper malware. The Russian tries to put this Viper malware into the Ukraine system to delete all the data from the utility system. So the the computer that control the utility system would not be operational. This is an example of how just to mind you that the Russian never admitted to it, but that's what is coming out on the news. Okay, so
So in
that
this
gives you
case,
this
sorry.
significant.
So in this case, as the Russians installed the Viper malware into the Ukrainian system, So how does cybersecurity system work is the blue team has to come out and defend from the Ukraine side.
Exactly. I mean, because if we, I'm just giving an example of a war, right? But in typical scenarios, I mean, without a war, what would happen is that you would see how NATO is responding. So the blue team, for example, would be sitting and monitoring, right? How do they know that there's these hundreds of malware being installed? They know this because the blue team is monitoring this. So
Okay.
these organizations have blue team and they're monitoring and they're discovering that hey, these malware has been installed. We need to find a way to take it down. So this is an example, an analogy of how it works, right? One team is actually they're attacking the infrastructure and the blue team is actually blocking these attack or detecting these attack.
Huh. Do you have any other examples of our cybersecurity threats?
Yes, another example is very interestingly is because we have COVID, right? And it's you would see that with COVID the dynamics change. People started working from home. There has been acceptance of remote working. So what we see extensively is during these COVID time, we see malware that mimics behavior of giving information to COVID for COVID tracking, for example. So there was one malware that's called COVID lock. Okay.
COVID
What
lock.
COVID lock claim? Yes, what COVID lock claim to do is it claims to be a coronavirus tracker. It tells you where the coronavirus is going, what's the infection rate. But in reality, it shows you the tracker, maybe not a real tracker, but it's doing at the back, it's actually hiding what we call a ransomware. Okay, and these ransomware threatens you. If you get infected, they threaten you. And in this case, if you install this COVID as COVID lock, what happens is if you install this COVID tracker, what happens is the COVID lock will come at the back and it will threaten you with a ransomware, and you would have to pay $100. Otherwise, your screen will come up saying the screen's locked. You cannot access your data.
Oh,
So that's
oh,
an example.
so that's ransom as well. So that means that they could like ask you for whichever amount of money they require.
Yes, they could, right? But in this case, they asked for $100 because they know that $100 is a rate where people will pay. But we've seen incidents on, if you looked at a recent incident, I think last year in Thailand, where a hospital was actually threatened with ransom. And I think they asked for like 70, 70 billion baht. Yes, I mean, it was a ridiculous amount. Let's put it this way. So the whole point was not to get the money paid, but the whole point was to create a stir, to create news, to create an awareness maybe of cybersecurity that this is happening. So generally, what I would see is that every time there's this ransomware, they would ask for a certain amount of money to be paid, and that range between multiple bitcoins, from very few bitcoin, 0.1 or less, to to 30 to 40 bitcoin currency.
Okay, so if a company, if a corporate would like to run a red team exercise in that company, where should they start if they don't know where to start?
Yes. So, like I said, I think number one, I mean, they have to be aware that cyber risk is real. Now, how do you make an awareness that cyber risk is real? One very basic way is to do this red team exercise. So they would contact companies, right? Like for example, CloudSec Asia or any companies that does cybersecurity assessment. They would contact these companies, and they would determine how many machines that they have, how many servers that they have. Okay. Now these companies would then perform the red team and show them how these servers, how these network, how these infrastructure glued together could be vulnerable. And it would be very real, right? For example, in some exercises, we put certain things, on the machine, and we show that we're able to access the machine to put certain things on the machine. But mind you, we are white hat. We're not doing this, to threaten you or to ransom you. We're doing this to help you understand your risk, so you can mitigate your risk, right? So it's very simple analogy. You go for health checkup to understand what you're sick with. So this is the same concept. You are doing a health checkup on your computer infrastructure, on your network infrastructure, to understand where you need to fix, what you need to do. So that's in a nutshell what will happen. They will contact these companies. This company will come in, do this health check, do this assessment, show them where they're vulnerable, and then that gives them a sense of awareness, because they see. I mean, it's one thing to read on the news. It's one thing to to understand, but it's very different to see it. Right? Seeing is believing. So this is sometimes the first step that we engage customer. When we engage customer, we do this red team, then they understand, hey, this is the amount of risk I have, this is the financial impact that this could cause. Now, what do we need to do next?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, since the white team, they will have the company's data of where the company is at risk. So how can the company be sure that the information won't be revealed anywhere else? Like, how can we trust the white team?
Okay, how can you trust the white hackers, right? Because the team
Oh,
that
white
actually hacked
hackers.
you is called the white hackers. See, like I said, it's very analogy, very colorful, you know. So how do you trust is a very good question. I mean, um, when you go to the hospital, right? You're revealing very personal information about yourself. You are getting your body checked. How do you trust the doctors, right? You trust the doctors because you look at the credential, you look at the hospital. This is something everybody does. So it's a very simple similar analogy to cybersecurity. You would look for a company that has the right certification. You would look for the team that has the right credential. Then you would look for how other people are doing it. So in a way, you have to trust someone, right? Would you rather trust the hackers who you don't know to come in and hack your network and get out all your information, or would you rather do a health check on your network with a professional team that has all these credentials, that has done all this work, that has all these references? You know, so it's a good question. Sometimes what they do is they talk to other references. So how do we trust?
Oh,
We talk to other references. So that's
yeah,
also,
like we
we've seen
talk
that in
to
the past
our
as well.
cousins, which doctors can cure some symptoms, right? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So my answer is, you need to trust someone, right? It's better to trust somebody who's certified, who's doing this for professional, than to trust the hackers. Because at some point, the question is not if your data would be hacked. The question is when your data would be hacked. Because,
When?
you know, yes, because these cyber security or cyber attacks, what happens is that a lot of the time they're done automatically. They're done by a thing called botnet. They're done by a thing called malware. These are automated tools. They discover that your network's vulnerable and they automatically infect your network, and then they report back to the bot owner, the owner of the malware. They say, hey,
Mm.
this machine's infected. This machine's infected. Everything is automated. So the question is again not if, it's when. Now you have to protect yourself before the incident happened on your network.
Okay. So does that so if CloudSec come to help a company to detect malware, do they run that on a software? What do you call the thing that is used to detect the infections?
Okay, I like your question because it gives me you're looking at from an external, right, from how
Yeah,
people would see this, right? So it's a good question. So when we do these exercises, what we would do is we would have teams, okay, and the team would then run a tool we call a scanner, okay. So like example, like when you go to the doctor, right, the doctor take a blood test, right, and then they detect what you have from the blood test, from the x-ray. So we do a similar thing. What we do is we have a thing called a scanner that scans your network. Now this scanner would interpret like a doctor report, but the consultant would understand how to read this report. So the first thing would be they would do a scanner. Then they would try to infect your machine with, for example, certain 0 day or certain malware. They would see the exposure. Is there a malware in your network already? So we would try to understand if there's anything in your network today. And to do that, we would look for pattern. Right? We don't infect you, but we look what's in the network and we look for pattern. So when we see this pattern, like when the doctor sees a heartbeat, right, and they understand that this heartbeat is normal, this heartbeat is abnormal, it's a similar structure. We look at the pattern.
Mhm.
From the pattern, we can tell you, hey, there's a sign of compromise. We call this IOC, indicator of compromise. So that's what we
Interesting.
do, right? That, yeah, it's not just running a tool and saying, hey, the software will do everything. The field is still very manual based because it requires a very professional consultant who would go in, who would then do the scans, who would then look for pattern, look for indicator of compromise, and then would compile a report and tell you what to do next.
Huh. Can I go back to the question where I asked how to trust team of the team of white hackers? So you mentioned that there are credentials. Can you give us what credentials to look for in the team that we can trust?
Okay. So in cybersecurity, there's a lot of credentials that are specifically related to this type of work, right? There is one thing called OSCP. Okay. There's another thing called CEH. Uh,
CE.
there's actually, yes, there's a lot of these credentials, right? And plus, like I said, it's the consultant CV should prove that the consultant is not doing this first time. The head consultant has done this on a new many times in the past. So you would look for these patterns, right? In terms of certification, you can just Google it, cybersecurity certification. You'll see a lot of these, right? And then you would look for these things in credential. And again, you also look for companies. If the company has credential, and the credential for the company could be ISO certification like ISO 27001, ISO 9001, CREST. You would look for all these things in a company. Yep.
And we can look for CloudSec.
Exactly, yes. We can always help.
Can you please conclude why is it important to conduct cybersecurity?
Okay. So why we need cybersecurity program, okay, successful cybersecurity program is because of this. Number one, there's reputational risk. For example, if your data gets hacked, right, what happens? I mean, people only talk about financial, but there's also reputational. Your organization loses its brand image, right? That you're doing something, you're not careful with the consumer's data, for example. So the reputational risk is very real. It's often overlooked. Okay. The other thing is, as we mentioned, is a financial risk. Financially, you see that, right? You could lose money, you could lose financial status, so that's very important. Number three is also equally important is regulatory. There will be regulatory requirement that you will need to adhere to, right? For example, the PDPA that will come into effect, the GDPR for European companies, and there's a few more, right? That these organization needs to adhere to, and that is very important. And that's also something why organization needs to have successful cybersecurity program, and that's actually one of the driving force as well. And the last thing is very important is you don't want to lag behind your peers, right? For example, in the future you're going to see a world where organization would only want to work with another organization that's cyber secured. They're scared that if you're not cyber secured and I work with you, you get hacked, data comes into me. So you would want to work with partners that are cyber secured, and this is evident in other areas. Like you want to work in the green energy, for example. You want to work with partners that have green energy certified. So you could see an analogy there, right? So you would see that because computers are linked together. If they're secured, hackers could come in from their network into your network. So you want to work with partners that are secure. So in a nutshell, I mean, reputational, financial, regulatory, and to not lag behind peers. These are how I would summarize why you would need a successful cybersecurity programs.
Today, thank you for coming and emphasizing to us the importance of having corporate data secured, and for emphasizing that it is so much better to be better safe than sorry, to have our data protected before the hackers come in and penetrate our data and take them away. And in the world of information technology, it is very risky, and having a technology like what CloudSec is doing, information technology and information security, we can be more sure that there will be someone to look after our backs, so we can work more peacefully. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณค่ะ